We gotta do it as a regular meeting, so I'll just open the meeting.
Okay.
Then I'll hand it over. How you doing? Okay, we'll start the meeting. Could you stand for the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So because we have a quorum of the town board, I have to treat this as a town board meeting, so I'm going to call the roll call. Councilman Coleman. Here. Councilwoman Enouen.
Here.
Councilman Paddock is absent. Councilwoman Smisa.
Here.
Supervisor Baden is here. So I'm going to turn over the meeting to Erin and Michael, who are going to do a short presentation. Then we'll open it up to individual questions. And then we'll sort of break down into, if individual people want to talk to individual board members, we'll sort of split up around the table with the mapping. We can have conversation looking at the map so people can ask specific questions about their property. And it's going to be a fairly informal meeting. We are going to record the presentation in the beginning of the meeting, and that'll be put on the YouTube channel later. We're going to do the similar format January 10th at 6:30 and January 20th, a Saturday, from 10 to 1. Going to be the same type of format. This is our first time kind of doing it this way, so I apologize if it's a little informal and we're kind of figuring it out as we go. But we want to hear from everybody on their properties at a public hearing process. We're able to hear from you, but we're not really able to answer back. So tonight is meant to be a dialogue, and we thank you all for being here on somewhat short notice on your Christmas holidays. But again, we are going to have 2 more meetings in January. If you've got more questions and want to come back, please do. If you have neighbors or friends or family who have questions, send them. You also can always email or write a letter to the town clerk's office or to my office, and it will become part of the record of the public hearing. These are not official comments on for the public hearing. Anything you say tonight is not a part of the public hearing, but we are getting the information. If you submit written communication, though, it is a part of the record of the public hearing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Erin and Michael.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Erin Enouen, and I'm on the town board. And I just prepared a short 15-minute presentation where I just really wanted to go over some just basic about how zoning works, what we're doing here, and how people can find information on the town website and things like that. Like Mike said, the heart of what we want to do today is actually have conversations. So I want to make it quick, but I just want to acknowledge that zoning and local legislation can be really complicated. And there's a lot of words that we use in common in our day-to-day lives that have specific meanings when we're talking about zoning. So, oops.
Want me to see if I can turn off those lights above the TV, or is that?
Can everyone see?
Everybody see that okay? Is there reflection? If not, we can turn off the lights over the TV.
Okay, so this.
Okay, thank you.
The space bar, I think. So we're here today because there are zoning changes being considered by the town board. This specific event is a response to requests from the public to have something like this, and I am very appreciative that we received that request, because I think these types of events are really valuable and are really important for the board to have and to host. And we're here, the board is here to answer questions and to listen to you. We want to hear about what your questions are about the proposed changes and your initial thoughts about them and impacts that they might have on you. And our goal is to do this in a way that works best with the community. So first, everything that we do, the town board is the legislative body of the town. So everything we do in terms of zoning is supposed to be rooted in our town comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is a master plan for the town. Ours was adopted in 2006 and has 7 key goals that are should be our values and considerations when we are looking at making changes and looking at how the town should be developed. So we have protection of agricultural lands, protection of open spaces, ensuring the town remains affordable and affordable housing exists, hamlet revitalization, prevention of incompatible uses, intrusion of incompatible uses in residential areas, better site design and green design, and protection of groundwater and waterways. And this document is public and it's located on our town website through eCode 360, and I have a slide that'll show you how to access that if you'd like to. So this is right here is basic general information, just how zoning and land use works in New York State. This is like Cliff Notes. So I could have probably done pages and pages and pages on this, but just so we're all kind of aligned when we talk about zoning code and zoning map, zoning manages the allowed uses, lot sizes, building requirements, and regulations around those things in the town. We currently have 9 zoning districts, but we are proposing adding 2 zoning districts. And when you're talking about the zoning districts, the number refers to the minimum lot size in acres. So for example, R2 is residential, 2 is for 2-acre zoning, and that refers to the density. So when we're talking about principal uses, that number is going to tell you how much acreage you have to have in order to do one principal use. Allowed uses and lot requirements are outlined in the schedule of district regulations. That's how you would find that document as it currently is. In the proposed changes, we've split that information to 2 different spreadsheets. So we'll look at that in just a second. And then zoning and land use, at least I feel like for this board and in its highest and best case, is meant to protect the health, safety, and well-being of the entire community and to guide development in line with the town comprehensive plan. So what is the process for making changes? Okay, again, this is really general, and when we break out, if anyone has any general questions at the end about what this specific process looked like, we're all happy to speak to that. But like I said before, the town board is the legislative body. So we consider changing new or existing laws in open meetings. And that actually happens very frequently. We are very frequently discussing our laws and whether or not we should add laws and whether or not we need to change laws. So those discussions begin in a public meeting. And in this case, it began with a zone review committee that presented their changes to the town board, and those changes were considered before they were even set for public hearing. They were considered by the town board. So what that means for you is that residents who at any time can be listening into the discussions and can provide feedback to individual town board members or the town board as a whole. The town board, once we have a draft local law or a draft change and we're ready to start taking action on it, we are required to hold a public hearing, at least one. We're required to refer that law to certain agencies. So no law, like a law, can get passed unless a public hearing is held and closed. So that's just like basic 101. We also, during that whole process of drafting, holding a public hearing, referring something. We can make changes to laws, draft laws based on comments. And depending on how big those changes are, we might need to re-refer or hold another public hearing. So sometimes a law can take, in the case of the short-term rental law, that took about 5 years to get to where it is now, where we do have a law on the books. So once the final version's ready, once the public hearing or public hearings have been held and closed, once all the referrals have come in, and there's a final version, the board can schedule a vote. And if there have been changes, the board needs to have the final version 7 days prior to the vote. So that's just another thing. We can't make big changes on the spot and then vote on something. Typically, when it comes to zoning, unless it's otherwise noted, the new legislation applies to future uses or future development. So usually that's a huge consideration. If we were going to pass something we wanted to apply to the whole town, typically when we're doing zoning, it's for future. So things that are existing are able to continue. Okay, so that's just basics, just so that we're all on the same page. Happy to answer any questions about that later. But this is now sort of basics about what we're talking about tonight. So we have proposals literally on the table. We have a map, a draft map that is proposing rezoning of parcels in the town. And that's pictured on the left. Then we have an updated schedule that shows the development standards and the allowed uses for each zoning district. So you should know that we're proposing to change certain parcels from one zoning to a next. We're also changing the allowed uses in districts. So even if you're not changing, there might be some changes for additional uses that you could do in your zone, or updates, because we've added some uses in the new proposals. So everything's color coded, so you should kind of be able to reference through that. And then the code itself sets the rules for how the projects are and applications move through the different functions of government.
So, and I think last time we had the conversation, people were asking, well, how do I know if I'm impacted? How do I know what the impacts are? So the idea would be you find your parcel on the map, you look along the columns here, the color-coded columns, you can see what the requirements are for building, you can see what's allowed for a specific use. If you want to have an events facility, if you want to have a golf course, if you want to open a school. Once you find that out, the zoning code, which is the 277-page document, tells you the regulations around how you actually are able to work that project, who you need to talk to, what you need to adhere to, et cetera, et cetera. So those sections in the middle are at the very end of the zoning code. So if you look at that 277-page document, you scroll all the way to the bottom, that's where you find the color code. The map is a separate document.
Yeah, the map is one local law, and then the code itself is another law. So this is just a zoomed in version of the proposed use schedule. What's new about this against the old one, the existing one, the one that's currently what we're using, it's organized by use. At the bottom, there's a reference key for the type of use and the application or process type you would have to do in order to do that use. And then the lot development standards, which is your setbacks and lot coverage and road frontage, those are all in a different chart, a separate chart. And then if you want to know district intent and all the regulations, that's in the code itself. So just if there's something in the box, the districts are across the top, the uses are on the side, and whatever the letters say is what you would have to do in order to do that use. So some things are accessory, some things are principal permitted use. If it's blank, it means that that's not allowed in that district. So you could apply for a variance to do that use. If something has an X, it means it's prohibited. That means in the code, we specifically said this is not an allowed use. Okay. So this is the old, I keep saying old, this is the current schedule. So I just wanted to show for comparison, if you wanted to know what's changing on your own, we can also look at that tonight, one-on-one. But if you want to know what's changing, this, you would refer to this and compare it to the other one. And so this one, you lists all the approved uses for your district in the middle, lot development standards on the right, and then the name of the district and the district intent is on the left. And it's organized by the district itself. So we could do comparison by looking at this document versus the other. And this is just showing that. So you can just go to the next slide.
I failed at my one task.
Oh, there we go. So this quickly is just those principal permitted uses, special uses, accessory uses. This just breaks down what each of those is. So principal permitted uses are the main use that's allowed in that district. And then when we were talking about acreage, typically for those, you need that minimum acreage per use. And then special uses go through the planning board. Some uses require site plan review, and then accessory uses need to accompany something. So that could be anything as a garage or agricultural labor housing, which needs to be associated with a farm use. And then just we wanted to kind of bring this up, and this can be a discussion topic. Just a lot of questions about zoning and taxes. So there's not a direct correlation between zoning and taxes. The taxes are based on the assessed value of a property and on the budgets that are adopted by the town and the local school district, which is the majority of the local taxes that we pay our school district. So assessments are based on the present use of the property. So whatever's on the property and what that use is classified as. And they are not, assessments by our assessor are not based on the potential use.
There's plenty of seats up front for people who just came in. Please, you're not interrupting. Please come sit. So if you'd like.
So for
Thank you.
this reason, a zoning change would not have a direct impact on your assessment or your tax bill. It obviously is a complicated, you know, our assessments are based on market value. So it's not like they're not related at all, but there is no direct relation. There's no way to know if there's would be a direct impact, particularly if things are happening townwide, things are affected townwide, the budget itself gets spread out evenly based on your assessed value. The other thing that I wanted to say is in our town, we do not have different tax rates for different uses. So some towns do have like a commercial tax rate for commercially zoned properties. We do not have that here. So our taxes and assessments are just based on the market value and what is actually the property is being used for in real time. Okay, so kind of in closing, just, this has like some animation. So there's another picture there. But if you want to locate documents, I just wanted to explain how to find that. You can go to our town website, which is this one currently. Click on the codes and ordinances, which I have a highlighter around. It's on the top bar. When you click on that, that takes you to a third-party site called eCode 360. That's where all of our town laws and draft legislation and town documents are located. So when you click on eCode 360, it'll take you to this. If you want to look at drafts, those are located under legislation. So I'm just pointing that out because it's not, intuitive.
Unfortunately, we can't change the title of that.
Yeah,
Otherwise
you
I would
can't.
have.
It's a great, eCode 360 is great, but it has its limitation. If you wanted to see the comprehensive plan, that one is just there. But then you would click on legislation, then it opens up all of our drafts. So if it's a draft, it's there. So if it's a lot, there's a lot of drafts, and I understand it's confusing. The ones that we are looking at today are the proposed zoning map, local law 14, and local law 13, chapter 140 zoning for public hearing. That's the version that we're talking about currently. You'll see below that, there's like 30 other things. We have been in this process of having public hearings and information sessions and all that on the zoning part for over a year now. So you'll see some of the original versions that have been changed and updated based on public input. All of that got put into local law 13. So if anyone, like, I love trying to help people find how to navigate this stuff. So this will be on our YouTube channel after tonight. And also I'm happy to go through and help anybody try to navigate these sites. Then for next steps, this today, Mike already said, is not a public hearing. So we're here to learn about proposals, how they impact you, whether that's good feedback or bad feedback. We want to hear that. We want to have those conversations with you. And again, thank you to the public for requesting this. The public hearings are currently open. This is an indefinite open because we didn't schedule another in-person public hearing, which we are required to do. So right now they're just open. So if you are inspired to make a comment now, you can do so by sending that to our town clerk. And you can do that by mail or submit via email or in person. And that's Kate Gunberg, and that's her email address. Once we schedule an in-person public hearing, we will have to notice that. And then you can make comments in person, on the phone, or via Zoom. In the interim, if you have a conversation with one of us, that would not be held as a public comment. That would just be having one-on-one dialogue with board members. And then we have 2 more information sessions scheduled. And so those are January 10th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. and January 20th, 2024 from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Those are both going to be here at the Harold Lipton Community Center. If you'd like to subscribe to the town news alerts to know when we're going to have public hearings and all sorts of stuff gets posted, that's the link, the Town of Rochester website, subscribe to news button, and you enter in your email address, and then you'll just get an email every time there's a notice that's get posted. And then you can watch our meetings on YouTube. They go back all through the pandemic because that's when we started streaming our meetings, and that's our YouTube channel. So with that, that's all I have for this short informational PowerPoint.
So I just wanted to clarify a little bit of what Erin said, and thank you, Erin and Michael, for your work on that. So I've had a number of people stop by my office. You can send an email. If you're particularly questioning your zoning of how you are been changed on the map itself, we're all compiling a list of the properties that people are saying, hey, I think maybe, take another look at it. When these 3 meetings that we've talked about tonight and the 2 in January, when those 3 are done, the town board will be in public meeting, reconvening. We'll be going through the zoning code itself. Currently, we're working through the subdivision code. We got comments from our local planning board. We got comments from the county planning board. We got comments from our local planning board's consultant. And we're incorporating changes. So what we held the public hearing on November 30th, between now and the next public hearing, there will be some changes made in all 3 documents, in the subdivision code, in the zoning code itself, and in the zoning map. That's why we're slowly working through this process. Once we get to the point of having these 3 meetings, getting the feedback, we'll schedule within our own meetings, some workshop meetings. We'll go through all that, we'll make changes. There will be another public hearing process, which will be back to the more formalized requirement under law, where we will hear comments again. Hopefully by that point, we will have satisfied many people of their concerns. And then it will move forward. There is no time frame for that. However, in the interest of keeping this moving, we hope that it is sometime in the spring. There is legal timeframes that must take place at each step. So we have to comply with those. We will have to refer the new codes to the county again, to our local planning board again. Those are requirements of law that they comment on it. And so all that will happen. So just to keep you apprised of the process, tonight is really step number 2 of the hearing process. Step 1 was the public hearings on the 30th. And then we will have the meeting tonight, the meetings in January. In February, the board will be working on our discussion of what we've heard. And on the other side, at some point, we will have a product that we will be presenting back to the public. So I want to clarify, last time I said it was 525 parcels. It is actually 538 parcels that are proposed to have been changed. And that's out of 4,800, roughly. It's 48. Charlotte, do you remember the number? It's 4830 something, I believe, or
I think it was
Yeah.
4803.
Oh, 48, I knew there was a 3 in there. Thank you. 4803. So it's approximately about, I think that's about 12% of the town was proposed to change. We do have the maps again, just for reference. On this side of the room is the laminated one is the current zoning. It's as of 2019, but that actually mostly dates back to the 2009 zoning change. Between 9 and 19, there were small changes for various requests to the town board to change zoning parcels, zoning of parcels. We also added the economic enterprise overlay zone. There were changes in that. The map over here, the paper map with the purple, is the proposed zoning map. The 4 over here are the 4 overlay zones. The underlying map is the proposed zoning map, but what they cover, and I'm not sure of the order, but there's an aquifer protection area, which is existing already. When you look on the current map, it's in like a pink crosshatched area. We are now making a separate map for each overlay because when it's all on one map, it gets really confusing. So we're making a separate map for each overlay. It's the aquifer protection. There's the FD floodplain overlay district. That is the floodplain area that is set by FEMA. The town does not designate that area. FEMA does. But we have regulations in the zoning code about building within a floodplain, about what can happen within a floodplain. So we are making a map that is current for the current FEMA floodplains. There is the economic enterprise overlay zone that I mentioned before. That was a new section of the code that was added in 2018 for adaptive reuse of properties in the town, properties that had become dilapidated, unused, or vacant land that had potential that was unused. We currently have 2 sites in the town that have gotten approval for that. One is on Lucas Avenue. There was a former chiropractor there for a little while, and before that was the offices for a water company. There is a gentleman there who is doing woodworking. He is in that structure, and there's some other small businesses there. The other one is the corner of Granite and Main Street towpath. That is what you may have seen recently as the Granary project. That is approved by the town board conditionally for to be made the economic enterprise overlay. It is in process of going through the planning board review. When it finishes that, it will be officially designated, but it's on our maps for the moment. And then the fourth overlay map is a new overlay map. It's a historic preservation overlay, and that simply recognizes the boundaries of the Algerville Historic District and the Accord Historic District. Both of those districts were put on the National Register. They were applied for by the Historic Preservation Commission. Algerville was, early 2010s, and I apologize, I don't remember the exact date, or mid 2010s. The Accord one was more recent, within the last 5 years. They do not put any additional restrictions on landowners. It's simply to note that that is an area the town considers a historic area. And we want to give that a little bit additional review. It doesn't give mandates of what you can do with your property, how you use your property, what your property looks like, but it gives the Historic Preservation Commission the ability to work with a landowner that maybe they can help assist in keeping the historic elements of a building intact. It also opens up the opportunity for some low cost, low interest loans that may be available to the landowner if they're doing work to restore something to a historic element. There are state funding loans available. Unfortunately, they used to be grants. They're now loans, but they are very low interest, and it makes it much more feasible to do. So that's a quick explanation of what's where in the map. So with that, I'm going to open it up. If anybody has any sort of generalized questions about anything, whether it be the map, the process, the code, we'll start with Mr. Dawson.
John Jack Dawson, a lot of people know me. I just have a statement. Pretty much what riled everybody into this by talking out was, unlike people that's moved here throughout the years, the locals, their investment, their retirement was their land. They don't have a 401k, they don't have a pension. Their plan was to pass their land down to their kids. They have 3 kids, they want to divide it with their kids. They want to sell their business, use it for their retirement, get a smaller home, hopefully keep their home, whatever it may be. And that's what brings this, everybody out here for this. In one little parcel I have, I've been sitting on for 30 years, but I always thought I wanted to put a business there, and it was business property. I thought, okay, I'll just sit on it, and just rent it out until that time came. Well, that time has come. But that time has come at the same time that you guys have came and said, oh, no, it's not B no more. And so that's why the people are here. A lot of people don't get internet up in the mountains, don't want to look at the internet. I don't want to look at the computer anymore, but they kind of have to. So we don't go try to navigate the town website, find other means, find someone to just ask questions. And so that's generally what's happening with a lot of these people. They have property, commercial property, divide it. We'll put the business here, we'll save this later, we can have a smaller business. When we get old, we can sell this business. And now it's the property next door. It's not business, it isn't going to be business no more. It's upsetting. It's their 401k you're taking from them. It's their retirement. As me, I don't have a pension, I don't have retirement. I did very well in this town. I came here with 2 horses and $500 and got a ticket for bald tires for $300. Started to work at the Pine Grove shoeing horses, and then started working at IBM at night. And then I started working at Mohawk also. I had 3 jobs. Within 3 years, I owned land. $100 down, $100 a month for $17,000. I did well. I did very well in this town for myself. I love this town. I've been here about 45 years now, raised my children here. And so I feel for the locals who have this. The newbies that are coming, they don't need that. They have enough money. They buy a piece of land. Oh, great, we're gonna live here. It's fine. They didn't plan on retiring and their children and things like that. That's the concern of most people. And that's why they get wild. That's why they get upset. Because it's like you're taking their 401k away. And that's all I have to say that I have to say right now.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I
Yes,
just have a question. You said there was already 9 districts. And you're talking about adding 2 more?
Yes.
Is that gonna be part of this plan now, or is this something that's gonna happen later?
That's part of this plan, so.
So the 2 districts that we're adding, one is called a preserved land 10-acre zone. Currently, the highest acreage, or the lowest density, the highest acreage per use is R5 residential, rural conservation 5.
Right.
If you look at the maps, the purple areas are the 10. For people that may not have been at the November 30th meeting, let me sort of explain how we arrived at that. So our comprehensive plan talks about preservation of the Catskill Mountains and the Shango Mountains area. As anybody who's familiar with our town knows, we are a valley with mountains on both sides. So a lot of the land in the Catskills, in the Shangos, is state-owned land, is owned by Mohonk, is owned by land preservation groups. So much of that purple area is already in conservation. A number of people have reached out to me that have put their own land in private conservation. We calculated there's approximately, and I was asked to calculate this number, and I don't have the exact number because we don't know every property that may be in a private conservation easement. But there's approximately 70 properties that are being zoned the PL10 right now that are not one of those groups, that are in a private land easement, that are in, and that's an estimate. It's probably somewhere between 60 and 80. It's hard to tell exactly. So what we did is we started at the ends of the town in the mountain areas and made that area the preserved land 10. The thought is that's areas where we don't want a lot of development, where for a lot of reasons. One is it's away from services. It's in an area that's environmentally and ecologically sensitive. It's in an area, when you ask people when they drive down 209 and they look out and they see the mountains, and then they see the Hudson Valley Resort popped up, and I don't mean to pick on it, but it blocks the view shed. And the view shed is a tricky term. It's not a term I really like to use, but it is something that both local people and newcomers enjoy about our community, is the scenic views, the ruralness of our community. So the goal is, in that 10-acre zone, is to allow smaller types of uses in every zone in the community, except the industrial district. You can do residential. The reason we allow residential, but you have to go through a review process, because we want you to know that you're in an industrial area. We have very few industrial areas, but we don't want somebody down the road building a house and then come in and going, you know, there's a warehouse next to me. Well, you moved into an industrial district. That is where the warehouse is supposed to be. So as you come down into the valley, you're now into what we call the R5 zone, the rural conservation. Allows us some more uses, some more intensive uses, but intensive being that it needs larger tracts of land. Not intensive in that it's very environmentally sensitive or anything. Then the majority of the green area is what it's currently called our agricultural residential 3-acre zone. We are changing it to agriculture 3A3. The reason being is those lands are primarily in the New York State certified agricultural district, which is a process that anybody who is using their land agriculturally can apply to Ulster County. You get into that. This isn't the tax breaks that farmers get. This is about land use. If you're in that district, you have some protections against nuisances, against neighbors who complain about, you know, there's a farm next door and it smells. Well, you're next to an ag district. The farmer is protected from that. So those are 3-acre zones. Then you move into the R2, which is the yellow. That is a low density residential. That area pretty much follows our existing town roads, up Queens Highway, up Medicahunts. There are areas where we're trying to encourage a little more density because there's already roadways there. We're not going to be building new roads. We also have the areas that are little pockets of smaller subdivisions that are R1. And, what's the name for R1? Thank you. Neighborhood residential. That's areas like at, where Store Road and Medicahonts meet there, where Duffy's store is. That's an R1 area. Some areas up Sampsonville is an R1 area. Alligarville is primarily an R1 area. There are areas where there are smaller parcels, more homes, maybe a few businesses that sort of help keep that area sort of somewhat self-sufficient. Then we have the hamlet areas. We're in one here. Our other hamlet area is in Kerhonkson. Our goal is to always try to expand the hamlet areas to be a more self-sufficient area, more walkable, doesn't need vehicles to get from business to home area. It's a challenge. When we talk to people, they talk about what Accord was 40, 50 years ago, where it was, you had businesses, you had residential. We would like to work toward getting back to that. Kerhonkson, the same thing. Part of Kerhonkson is in Warsing, but the parts that are in Rochester, we want to sort of merge that and blend that into another thing. Potentially down the road, I mentioned the other night, sidewalks. I know people think sidewalks along 209 is not feasible. It may be very different though, if you look at like Marbletown sidewalks, Ellenville sidewalks, sidewalks along 209, the way it is right now, absolutely. But if there were more businesses along or more business with residential above kind of thing, there might be more of a need for sidewalks. I fully admit it is a dream for down the road, but you have to start somewhere. Then we have some additional districts that are very specialized districts. There is the B business district. That's the red area on the maps. That is an area primarily along Route 209. And that is where 209 is a difficult area to zone. It is our main thoroughfare. It also is in the area along the Rondout. It is some of our most fertile farmland. If you dig up all that topsoil, put houses there, you've lost, thousands of years of nature depositing soil there that is some of the best in the valley. It also goes through the hamlets. So you've got and then there's pockets along 209 that are primarily residential. So in 09, when we rezoned, we tried to split it up into pockets based on actual uses, predicted, allowing for expansion of uses, but that's what happened in 09. We took it a little bit of a step further with this zoning code. As I said on the 30th, I freely admit we made some mistakes. Part of our goal in hearing these people's comments is we're making a list. We will be discussing these and we will be making corrections where we believe we did make mistakes. I mean, I'm speaking for myself, but there's parcels that people have come and talked to me and I've looked at and I said, you're absolutely right. We made a mistake on this one. So also these specialty districts, we have the natural resources district. That's the area kind of between Crum Road and Rochester Center primarily, where traditionally our town has had a number of sand and gravel mines. Also off of Boodle Hole Road. And there's one other one somewhere. I can't remember where the other is, but there's a few little pockets of industrial districts. Those are carryovers from the former Snapple on Medicahonts. That is an industrial district. That was made an industrial district probably back in the, I don't know, the 80s, 90s. Off of 209 behind Gatos, Bob Gatos, that area. Mr. Dawson's familiar with that property. That is an industrial district. Thank you. Up Sampsonville, off of Route 66, there is an area back there that is an industrial district.
Not being used anymore. It will fade away.
Right, it will. Where the Rod and Gun Club area is and what used to be the woodworking place next to it, that is an industrial district. So those are very specialized districts. What we also added is a community services district, a CS district. That on the map is the brown areas. Those are lands that are owned by the town, owned by the fire district, owned by the ambulance squad, owned by the school. They are just what the definition says, community services. In past, we sort of shoehorned them in, like the transfer station was part of the R5 district. The transfer station, it was not a residential district, obviously. So we have now created this for town-owned properties, for ambulance, for fire. So those were the two new districts. The biggest change is the PL10 addition, the adding of the historic preservation. The community service was just a correction for how we were actually using the property. So that kind of gives you an overview of how we arrived at where we did. The really difficult part is the transitions. As you're coming down the mountain, where do we change it from PL10 to R5 to AR3 to R2? And that's where most of the questions we're getting are from people who are at that transition. And that's the part we really need to roll up our sleeves and take a good hard look at and say, did we do it in the wrong place? Should we move the transition further up the mountain? Should we, should we consider rezoning this back or leaving this as it is based on the conversations? And that's really the point we're at. We had to do the zoning code first. We had to do the subdivision code. The map has been something that we've been working on. We probably started it intensely, maybe May, June. We held a lot of Saturday morning meetings. The town board met here at least 2 Saturdays a month for a number of months over the summer, working on the maps, coming up with these draft maps. The county assisted us in preparing these maps, and this is how we got to where we are. So now we're hearing from you guys. A number of people have come and said, hey, I'm not changing my zoning, but I'm different than I used to be. In 2009, and John can attest to this because he was involved in it, and so was Jerry Fernino, as was I, and a number of David O'Halloran, Frank Portwright, Alonzo Grace, a number of people that were community members. The town used to be 1 acre zoning, end to end. The comprehensive plan was from 1969, and it dated back so far back that at one time, the DOT was considering moving Route 209 to be away from the hamlets and moving it so it bypassed everything. Clearly that never happened, but we were working on a 1969 comprehensive plan that was all based on the DOT potentially moving 209.
Play Hill Road.
Yeah. In 06, in 04, a comprehensive plan committee was formed. It started with the day that was held at the church over on 209 by escape time. It was a day long called Imagine Rochester. We had a consultant. We had about 200 people show up. It was really amazing to watch newcomers, old timers, a combination of it. I remember this to my last day. Wayne Kelder, many of you know, stood up at the end of this and he said, I came not expecting to be impressed by any of this. And he said the dialogue that we've had, that may not be the exact word he used, but the conversation we've had gives me a lot of hope. And out of that came a new comprehensive plan that the town board held meetings in all 5 districts. We were at the Rochester Firehouse. We were here. We were at the, I can't remember where else, at Algarville Firehouse. Peter Fairweather from New Paltz helped us put it together. That was adopted in 06. A new zoning committee was started. Again, Mr. Dawson was involved on that, as was I. In 08, there was a change of leadership from the current town board in the 07 election. They put together a new committee of 10 members, and those are the ones I was talking about: David O'Halloran, Frank Portwright, Alonzo Grace. They worked for a year and a half, and in the summer of 09, the map was presented. the zoning code. We had a meeting at a presentation at the Ackworth Firehouse. And I can tell you 200 people showed up, less than showed up in November 30th. So I truly think that, and there were some people very questioning of it, but it moved through the process. It was adopted. Minor changes had been made in 2014. The zoning code was replaced again, but it was replaced because it was a little bit of a change here, a little bit of a change here. And it was easier to just say we're replacing the whole thing rather than have a 70 or 80 page amendment section. And that was done by Councilman Drabkin, and Councilwoman Chachkin really did all the work on that. That led to, in 2017, there was a new committee that was put together that started the process. In 2018, there was again another change of leadership. Supervisor Chipman stepped down because of his health, and there was a change. We moved that forward. Then the pandemic hit. We sort of slowed down a little bit. The zoning review committee that worked on that version, and gee, John, your name keeps coming up. Again, Mr. Dawson was involved in that one as well. Presented to the town board in 2021, the fall of 2021. In early 2022, we began having a series of public hearings, chapter by chapter of the zoning code. So people didn't have to come talk about 277 pages of code. They could come talk about 10 pages of code or 5 pages of code.
Matt, can we pause for a second? Because I'm willing to stay here as long as people need, but I also want to make sure there's a lot of people here. I'd like to, can we get everyone's questions maybe first?
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody understands the history, because a lot of people think this is just being done last minute, and it's really important to hear this. So,
Okay.
And I'm about to wrap it up here because I'm to the end of how we got to where we got. So if there are any other questions, we can answer them. And this was a long way of answering your questions about the map itself. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, my name's James Farrell. I just have a quick question. I'm one of the 70-some people that are in the preserved land. So I'm not Mohawk. I don't have a bunch of land. Actually, I own 2 pieces. I think they're 2.1 or 2.2 acres. My house is zoned preserved, and my piece of property right next door to it has stayed the same in the rural conservation. So I'm trying to figure out why one of my piece of properties is deemed, where my house is deemed to change, and the one piece next to it is deemed to stay the same. And I guess
Giving me address.
yeah, 31 Frankel.
Okay, thank you.
And so my bigger question is, like, when I hear the word preserved, I think of preserves, things that are going to be canned and saved for a long, long time. I'm all about the idea about it. I have 3 kids. My 3 kids aren't allowed to go do anything in the woods that I would deem interesting. Motorcycles, snowmobiles, anything with the engine. And like, we have all this preserved land that my family doesn't get to use. I mean, I risk when I go out. Do I want to risk? I'll say this out loud. Do I want to risk getting a ticket so I can go have a good time? To me, it's worth it. I can afford it and pay for it. I work hard for my money, and I'll take the ticket somewhere in the woods. And I will, and I'll admit it out loud. But that's not, the idea of preserved land is that we all get to use it. I'm allowed to walk through the woods, that's fine. But I also should be able to take my motorcycle into the woods and have fun. I'm not destroying an area. I'm not saying some kids may be bad, some may be good. I'm just saying, the idea of preserved land to me basically means that I'm not allowed to use it. I understand today you gave me something that I can go read and see the differences. That hasn't been given to me until I got to watch your PowerPoint. And so to me, it's like, I come into this position and I feel completely uneducated. And I, again, have 3 kids that are literally like sitting at home now, my wife's taking care of them. So I can show up here to try to figure out what's happening. And I'm not affected nearly as much as all you guys. And I did just move here in 2018. And I do care. And it's hard to move here. I moved from northern Michigan, where we're allowed to do a hell of a lot more things than I'm allowed to do here.
So,
And the other thing, I will say this to the board, and I will comment, you took care of your part of this. I emailed everybody on the board. My wife and I had one child that passed away. And I emailed everybody on the board to donate a sandbox to the town. And No one responded after I emailed everybody on the board with my proposal. I walked into the town board one day, with my children, met your assistant, and the assistant said, "Oh, let me just like have you talk to Mike." Literally, I talked to Mike, and the next day we had everything going, and the sandbox was done and put together, and is now currently there. So I was super disappointed that my wife emailed all of you guys, and we didn't get one response back. And that was it. I just wanted to say that super disappointed me and my family, who are hardworking, tax-paying parts of the community.
And great neighbors.
Thank you, Jay.
Do you remember around when the email came out?
I can go look and email you.
So the answer on the preserved land is we don't put restrictions on things like, it's private property.
I get, but the idea of preserve to me is like saying it's something that's canned, that's gonna last forever, you know what I mean? So for me, it means that in my mind, means I can't use it until I came today to figure out something that I can read.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. So the land that we're designated as preserved is primarily because it's areas that the town deems it important for environmental reasons. If you do, and your property, I believe, is near Mr. Fernino. So there is an area there called the Fly swampland, and the surrounding areas of that watershed are very important for groundwater throughout the community. It flows down into the town. So that area in particular is why a lot of that was done. And as I said before, did we make any mistakes? Possibly. So we're going to look hard at those. But the preserved land, in most cases, is because it's either an environmental issue or it's an area that there's not a lot of ability for infrastructure, or it's really difficult to get a fire truck in there or something. And we don't want to have 10 homes somewhere, 10 1-acre parcels, because if we can't provide the emergency services there because of whatever. So I'm just saying generalized, and that's part of why, and you and I have talked about your specific property, and some of your comments, well, most of your comments made a lot of sense to me, and I think I already have you on the other list, but I've written it down here, and we'll take a look. And as I said, did we get some of these wrong? Probably. But the goal is to keep a larger scale development in areas where it can support it, and less development in areas where it can't support it. So the preserved land is not about that you can't go walk there or something. We don't have no control over that because it's private land. The owners control where you can walk, where you can ride a motorcycle. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. Mr. Fernandez.
If I may, and perfect timing, because James and I are neighbors, and for anybody who thinks that those of us, myself being here, as the town board knows, 50 years this year, and James and Sarah Harrison and the daughter, wonderful neighbors, outstanding neighbors, and we've had this talk about some of these things and how does 2.1 acres become something that this town might have an issue with. And I don't know, having sat on, as Mike said, we both sat much closer than we are right now, and sat over at the Old Town building, and I think we spent about 2 years working on that whole, thank you for reminding me. And the best thing about tonight, by the way, Erin, I'm gonna just stick this one on you. My wife is out seeking her own Christmas present, and my daughter is doing the same. Thank you for having this tonight, because it gets me off the hook. If those things suck, I didn't do it. You did it to yourself, because I was here with my wonderful neighbors.
We're happy to be your excuse, Jerry.
There you go. You guys saved me. However, let me just say this, and James, this was perfect in the term. Preserve. This is Webster's dictionary. I always love going back to Webster's as to having some really good explanations of words we like to use. Preserve. to keep safe, to maintain unchanged, to keep and maintain intact, to set aside and restrict the use of certain persons. All of those things, control, control, control. And when we sat, you know, Mr. Dawson explained it very well, as well in the previous one, Jack. When we sat down, and I will take the snowballs and rocks and everything. We were 1 acre, you're exactly right. And I said, up there in the mountain that I've had properties, and the properties we're talking about and being neighbors with James, and Sarah and the kids, had since the earliest one was 85. And some of what I have in there preempted even the New York State 1986 Wetlands Act. And in fact, I kept a piece of that trailer that was up there to preserve my rights to replace that. And I plan on doing those things. But it's really upsetting because I have heard, especially coming from that committee, when we went from 1 acre to the 5 acres, we also said that there would be a grandfathering of what was pre-existing. And in fact, James and Sarah have that house on 2.2 acres. The previous owner happened to purchase the property in between myself and her. And in fact, offered, hey, Terry, you want to split it? He said, no, I've already got 30 here. I'm good. You take that. But, and whatever James and the kids with the expanding family and so forth, I have no problem with what their property rights, because mine having 31 acres back there, and they're all total, I have no more rights than they have, none whatsoever. They own that property, they pay taxes. As I said in the early one meeting, I have paid, and I did the math, anybody wants to see it on paper, I have paid more, and I think most of us in this room do that math. In 10 years, paid more in taxes. I know how it's broken up and how horrible school tax are and so forth. But I paid more in honest taxes in 10 years than I paid for all the properties that I own. And so none of us, again, are owners. We're simply tenants of the state, the county, and the town, because we pay those taxes.
And
It is really upsetting, and you guys are stuck with it. Because you guys, as my wife spent 5 years up there, you guys represent us. And it's hard because you have a balancing act. But this balancing act of taking, and Mike, your numbers, you just explained, I just changed the 536 parcels you originally came up with. Obviously, you found 2 more.
Oh, it's 536, then I remembered wrong. So it's 536.
Okay, so I helped you there.
Yeah.
But again, we'll go back, when I knocked the numbers off as you and I did the other day, town hall, there's approximately 70 of us, just 70 of us, James, who are in this category. And I just spoke to one of them, who I believe will be at the next, he's not even here right now, but he is 100%, and he might be one of the largest one of the private owners who said, Jerry, you speak for me. You notice I will not use his name. I said, you come use your name. This is an open forum right here. I said, you use your name. I am against this, and he is 400 acres plus in totality of what he has. I am against, I already do the best to keep and protect what I have. But nobody's gonna come in and tell me to do what it says right here from the Webster's Dictionary of what could happen, as well as what he might want to do with that property or properties down the road. And it's really scary because I saw personally what I was a part of, going from 1 acre to 5 acres up there. That is the highest, correct me if I'm wrong, that is our highest acreage. And when we talk about the gentleman who was here, I don't know if he's here tonight, looking for, Charlie, he spoke to you about affordable housing, you recall him? And we're gonna help him out, whatever. how do we have affordable housing when we now have to double the acreage? And we're talking an acre of land is not the affordable acre of land I bought when I bought that little happy hunting ground of mine, my little special place I go sit in the woods and forget to load my gun. But it gives me such peace. The whole point excuse how I'm gonna put this, is not against any one of you. It is simply, you might have been looking for the answer to a problem we didn't have. Okay? That's what I'm looking at. And by the way, I have spoken to my dear friends over here, to Gene and Mary Ellen, and Jack and I go way back. And what we're saying is we're all here. Tony Kowalczyk said it very well. I'm concerned about somebody pulling in my driveway thinking that they're buying a tractor when they're coming in to buy some drugs or whatever it is. And I'm going, holy crap, every one of us has a little bit of an issue here. So you really do need to look at all of these things. Yes, James and I hear about this whole PL10 thing. That term, that word alone, preserve, that's a real bad word by Webster's dictionary. And as you found out, Mike, there is already 26,619 acres that would be put into that. And so much of this is already New York State, OSI, Mohawk, Nature Conservatory, etc. Every one of those things, either the state by its own doctrine can acquire those things, or private individuals can. We can all, I can put mine into a land conservatory and so forth. So there are other things that can be done if people would like a tax break from it. This thing would not be a tax break to us. This would be a real tax hindrance because we paid for property that we had far more uses of, which now it's going to be deteriorating. Now you're putting me in a legal situation. I don't think go any further than that. You want to put me into a legal situation, I'm not speaking for anyone else here, just the Fornino family. You put me in a legal situation, well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna fight that. I will fight that. And that's not what I want to do because we're all neighbors. And I've always considered you, Mike, we could be on opposite sides of something, but we've never been enemies, ever. And I don't see that in any one of you. And I hope that you truly do represent all of us. And I'm done, and I appreciate the time all of you have just given me.
So the preserved land doesn't really matter what Webster's definitions of the word preserve. We define the zoning district. And I'm just saying, and we say the uses, and I freely admit there's some different uses between the PL10 and the R5. But if you do look at the two side by side in the proposed, many of the uses that are in the R5 are also allowed in the PL10. So I'm gonna stop there, but you can't go by Webster's definition. Yeah, we picked for preserve because the original proposal was protected land. And I said, we gotta soften that word because we're not trying to protect the land, we're trying to preserve it. So your point is very valid and we'll consider changing the name. So, and we will look at all those properties. So, Mr. Hertz.
Yeah, I was hoping we could move the meeting on to why we came. And if you have a public meeting to discuss these things. This is not a public meeting to discuss it. Not that I don't agree with what you're saying or disagree. But you guys have volunteered here. There are 4 of you volunteering your time. It's already 7:30. There's a lot of people here who want to go individually and explain what our issues are. And I think we should stop having people discuss this and just meet with you guys and do what we're doing, because there is enough time in the night to do this.
Okay, is the board okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with us breaking out into
Okay.
us being able to answer people's questions individually.
Unless there's any other,
Like, just what is wrong with the 5 acre? What is wrong? Like, why isn't that protecting the land as it is? I'm one of the PL10 and I have a narrow property. I'll be able to do nothing for my family but the property anymore. It's like with all the different rules and stuff. And my other general comment, and I had lots, Mr. Dawson and everyone else expressed a lot of my concerns. I've only been here 23 years, so not as long as them, but have a home here and a life here, and my heart is here. So technically, there are discrepancies between the chart in the back, the appendix, and what it says in the document of the law. Which supersedes which?
Well, if there's any discrepancies, we need to fix them. So if you can let us know what they are, that would
What
be helpful.
happens if there are discrepancies? What if I don't tell you? Is the
Well,
law valid?
That's true. You don't have to tell us, but if you want to point them out, we'd be appreciative if you want to tell us. And
If I want the law to be valid, maybe I won't tell you.
it'll only be invalid if a court decides that. So just to clarify.
But there
The
are
law
discrepancies
is-
now.
The code is the law, the chart is the appendix that is
All
supposed to be
right, so if
based on.
the chart has, even though I'm very against the 10-acre zoning, the chart has, things that say that are acceptable in PL 10, which are not mentioned in the body of the law.
But that's not a discrepancy. The body of the law is the uses is the chart. The body of the law is an expansion of certain types of uses that have additional restrictions. So I think you're misunderstanding. It's not discrepancies. I'll be happy to talk to you one-on-one to answer more
Are
specifically.
ADUs acceptable uses acceptable in a PL 10?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, it does not say that, it lists all the other
Okay.
in the body of the
And
law.
thank you, and we will fix that because that is
In the ADU law, or are you saying in the zoning law
The
specifically
zoning,
for
the zoning
PL 10?
law. This, whatever we're talking about tonight, if I'm reading the right law, because who knows, I'm gonna say. But it says like R5, it doesn't mention PL 10.
Okay. You may have identified an error and we'll fix it.
Short-term transit, yeah. So it's in the chart, but it doesn't mention PL 10 in the.
Okay.
Well, those laws were established before PL 10 is not a real. So you're talking
But in the-
specifically the
No,
ADU or the short-term rental
Yeah.
law. They're-
Why don't we?
Yeah, we can look at.
Yeah, why don't,
Local law C of 2023. Is that what we're talking about, or did I get the wrong?
no,
part?
that was the original, the zoning law, local law 13 is what we're talking about. The local law, well, but see, it's a case of we're asked to give information and we've given a lot of information. So the local law C was the original public hearing, and we've moved past all those to local law 13, which is the compilation of all those local laws. So I'd be happy to talk to you offline so we don't keep all these other people waiting and try to answer your specific question.
All right.
And if you have identified a mistake, we'll fix it because it is intended to be in there, so.
Any other general questions or do people want to break down?
I think we should break out. So.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop the recording, and so when this is posted online, we're ending at the breakout portion of the information session.
So as we break out, we'll kind of congregate in various areas. I mean, that is the main zoning map, but the zoning map over here is the same zoning map. It just has